very, very excited. And that's my shtick. Although I do see the notes there, and I am like a butterfly. I once had one time, little digression, yay, where we were doing Archer Paranormal Investigations was doing an investigation, and we phoned into someone with much better skills and higher level of expertise, and I didn't know her personally, and she was like, "Is somebody there of the team attracted by things that move, like shiny things, silver, and charms and things?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, that's me!" So I just had my butterfly moment with that. So yes,
I like shiny things too.
Right. Well, she said that the Fae are with me, and I believe that since 43% of my DNA is Scotland, and I'm now learning Scottish Gaelic to join the 60,000 people who are left who speak it.
Wow, that's impressive, because that cannot be easy.
It's not as hard as Irish. Irish Gaelic is like they have like 15 letters for one sound. And so I'm enjoying the Scottish Gaelic, and it's interesting to be able to see which ones kind of are similar, where English might have gotten the variation from, and then totally at odds with each other. So, and I'm trying to butter up my husband so that our big trip post-COVID is to Scotland.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
No, I know, right? But it's cold there, so that's what he keeps hitting me with.
And he said that I really need to join you, right? Didn't he say that?
I think so.
And just get out his credit card, and we're good. I'm there. Oh, you're muted, Heather.
I just need to give up today. I'm like, I was going to say I need to tag along on that one too. But right. I do want to apologize, even though it was recording on my end, it wasn't broadcasting. So for those of you who are wondering why all of a sudden the Haunted Librarian just started talking mid-sentence, we have been recording for over a minute.
And that's odd. I'm like, okay, what's wrong? Because I can't comment because I don't see us live.
I know. I just noticed that because I was going to share it everywhere, and I was like, "Where is it?"
I'm like,
missed that fabulous intro. Oh well.
Well,
play it again.
It's recorded.
I like the intro. The intro is fabulous.
I love the new music. I picked some fun music for this year to put on it. So.
Mm-hmm. New year, new tunes.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And he made me look like I have highlights.
Put some in.
I need to put some in. I desperately need. I need to come up and visit you.
Come on to Atlanta. I'll hook you up.
Okay. Before we get started with actually, we can start anytime. I was going to say something, but I completely. I'm just going to go today, and I'm going to let you guys take care of it today.
Oh, that's too funny.
Heather must like shiny things too, butterfly.
Exactly.
Awesome.
So whenever you're ready to get started, just let me know.
I am ready. So I'm going to flip the screen.
Do we want to, if people have questions, do we want to do at the end or during? How do you want to do it?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. No, thank you for that. Was my question.
Honestly, you can interrupt me at any time.
Okay.
What I used to tell my students was interrupt me where you're at and have the question, because if you wait to the end, I may not have remembered what I said.
I'm the same way.
So what I'll do is I'll save the questions until you're done with that slide, and then I'll stop you before we move on.
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So I am going to share. It's been so long since I've done this. So hold on.
I'm going to mute myself because the dogs will be snoring at any minute now.
Okay. So do you see the screen with 3 houses?
Yep.
Awesome. I am Lisa Schnurr, the Haunted Librarian. You can find me at thehauntedlibrarian.com. And tonight I'm going to talk about true crime hauntings. And again, this is merging with 2 of the things that I'm most fascinated with. true crime, and the paranormal. And so I've got 3 stories for us tonight about tragic murders that happened that evolved into possible hauntings. So we are going to start over in England, and we are at the Red Barn murder in 1827. So Maria Martin's family had been torn apart. Her father, Thomas, was a mole catcher, and he actually was a taxidermist with the moles as well. And her mother, Grace, died when Maria was 4 years old. However, or in spite of, Maria was very, very popular with the local men. She was a wild child. And so here is Maria. Here is the Red Barn. And this is what happened after the murder. So our cast of characters tonight are Maria Martin and William Corder. And so William doesn't come in immediately. However, he does have a relation with a brother who is early in the story. So at age 7, Maria was sent to live with a clergyman, and she went into service. She was dismissed by the age of 15. At age 17, she and William's brother, Thomas, had a baby who died in infancy. So we have child number 1. Thomas tragically later drowned. Her second beau was Peter Matthews, a man who was not interested in marriage, but did send money to support child number 2, Thomas Henry, when he was born. Then Maria hooked up with Thomas's younger brother, William. And then she had her third child at home during the second week of April. And the child's name was Martha Corder. The child, however, soon disappeared. Her body was never found. William, like Peter, was not interested in marriage either, or at least not to Maria. And so, disguising his concern that she would be arrested for bastardy, having a bastard child, he feigned concern and claimed that they should elope. And so Maria thought they were eloping, but William, he just merely intended murder. William's family was also torn apart. His father, John, and his mother, Mary, had 8 children. However, of the 8, 2 died in infancy, so we're down to 6. A sister, Hannah, died at age 15, and his brothers, John Jr. and James, contracted TB and were left invalids. Thomas, the first boyfriend, drowned in a pond in Polstead, and the father was also dead. That left Mary, the mother, a sister, Mary Ann, and William, who had zero desire in running the 300-acre farm. Called Bill, or Foxy, the 5-foot 4-inch man was described as slender, short-sighted, but an excellent shot. And he wanted out. So on Friday, May 18th, 1827, William arrived at the Martin house, urging Maria to leave immediately, claiming that the police were coming and that she was going to be arrested. Maria donned men's clothing as a disguise, and she fled, and the two had coordinated that they would meet up at the Red Barn. And that was the last time anyone saw Maria alive. William was trying to keep up the guise that Maria was still alive. And so he would write letters home to Maria's father and her new stepmother, claiming that they lived in Ipswich, and then they moved to the Isle of Wight. But Anne, the stepmother, became suspicious. She was actually known to have been born with second sight. And she started having these nightmares. And the nightmares were of Maria telling her that she was murdered and telling her to go to Red Barn, and that's where her body would be discovered. And so after several nights, Anne was able to convince Maria's father to go out to Red Barn. And on April 19th, 1828, they began searching for her. Anne was convinced that William murdered her and that she was buried there. And she was correct, because the father actually did locate Maria stuffed into a sack. Her body had begun to decompose. However, she was still recognizable, and across her neck was William's green handkerchief. An inquest was held at Cock Inn, And Maria's sister identified the body and William's handkerchief. William did not attend. He actually had fled. Kind of smart, I guess. He made it all the way to Brentford, where he quickly met a woman named Mary Move through the Lonely Hearts advertisements. And that was like the early days of when, now you have online dating. Well, back then you would put these ads in the paper, lonely heart seeking companionship. They married quickly, and it might be because Mary's family were in the jewelry business, and they actually funded a school that William and Mary started, the Quarter Finishing School for Girls at Everly Grove House. Constables Ayres and James Leah captured William, who had on his possession 2 pistols, letters from a Mr. Gardner, and a French passport. So William actually wasn't long for his marriage either to Mary. Trial commenced on August 7th, 1828 at Shire Hall, and it was in attendance by ticket only. If you didn't have a ticket, you didn't get in because it was a main event. The Chief Baron of the Exchequer, Judge William Alexander, presided. And there were 9 charges against William. And they didn't know actually how Maria died. Even though she was recognizable, they identified her. The coroner couldn't say what she died from. So what they did was they charged him with everything they could think of, hoping that something would stick. So they charged him with stabbing, shooting, strangling, and even burying alive. They weren't taking any chances. And he pled not guilty. He actually testified on his own behalf. He said that they did meet at the Red Barn. They met, they argued, and while he was stomping off, he heard gunshots. Well, the jury didn't buy it. It only took him 35 minutes to proclaim he was guilty, and he was sentenced to hang and be dissected. Back in England, and this is a little tangent, back in England, if you were guilty or found guilty of a heinous crime like murder, they would not only hang you in the public, they would actually dissect you. And so you would be hanged, drawn, and quartered. And that is what happened to William. On August 11th, 1828, William was set to die. And for some reason, he confessed to the murder. And it was before a crowd of 7,000 spectators that hangman John Foxton was set to his task. Once dead, William's body was taken to Shire Hall, where a public dissection took place. Could you imagine just seeing the hanging and then going in and then watching the dissection? And then the next day, on August 12th, an autopsy was performed in front of students. Maria, we think was maybe at peace. I don't know. The hauntings actually don't really focus on her. They focus on William because after being hanged, drawn and quartered, a bust was made from his skull. And this is actually him. I think he thought he was going to get away with it. And this was at the trial, and he's just kind of calm, reading, thought he was it. And this is an illustration that was created of Mary coming, or Maria. I'm going to keep calling her Mary from, I don't know why, maybe the second wife, but coming to Anne to tell her that she was dead. But here we have, the middle is the bust made of William. That was taken from his skull. A death mask was made. His skin was tanned and used to bind the book that you see on the right-hand side. And these were the evidence at trial, what was found on him when he was arrested. His skeleton actually, after these things were done to him, his skeleton was actually reassembled, and it resided or was displayed at the West Suffolk Hospital until 2004, when they thought it actually was not ethical to have an actual human skeleton in a medical building, and so they cremated him. There were a lot of rumors surrounding this case. One was that Anne, the stepmother, who was only 1 year older than Maria, was actually having an affair with William, and that together they plotted to have her killed. And so that's how she knew about the Red Barn and where she might be buried. We don't know. The story, though, captured the imagination of the public. So here we have, and this is just a sampling of what came about from the murder. There was a ballad that was written and performed, and you can actually hear it if you go to YouTube. And the Murder of Maria Martin ballad. There were plays, there were novels, there were several motion pictures made. And then down in this bottom left-hand corner, you will see ceramics. And next time I appear on Ghost Education 101, I'm actually going to be talking about memento mori and the different artifacts that were created, the mementos from these crimes, and also sharing with you another side note, my York ghost from England. But they made these and people bought them, and they would display them in their houses with great pride. And actually, if you go online and see some of the auctions for some of these ceramics, they are expensive. Big business, huge business. Polstead, the town where the murder happened, actually became a tourist destination. Unfortunately, the Red Barn burned down in 1842, and tourists and looky-loos went to Maria's grave, and they would chip away at her tombstone, and eventually a shed was erected with a sign because they were just desecrating her grave. Victoria and Albert Museum has 2 marionettes, puppets that were used. And during the heyday of the puppet shows, before cinema became big, they actually had a play where they would take the puppets to town and play out the murder of Maria Martin. And her marionette actually had a blood string attached so that when it came to the moment of the death, it would be pulled, and it would pull out a red cloth to simulate blood coming from her neck. William's skull actually did not remain at West Suffolk, the hospital. It actually went into the care of a Dr. John Kilner, who kept it, and deciding that it was cursed, gave it to his friend. I don't know how friendly they actually were. And then the two of them decided that it was cursed, and the only thing that was going to break the curse of the skull and to put William at peace was to hold a Christian burial. And it's interesting, though, because there aren't any hauntings related to Maria, which I would think that there would be, but I think it might be that the barn's not there. And so there isn't this visual reminder. And so this is just a story that captured the imaginations of people in England and probably abroad. So that is my first story. I can't see the screen to see if anybody has questions, so I'm just going to.
Yeah, we do have a few questions. I was just popping back in to put them up. Johnny asked, he's like, and this was in the 1830s. Is that correct?
This was 1827. 1827.
Okay, and then Philomena, welcome Philomena. I just saw your comment earlier and wanted to say hi, but right now it's hard for me to comment hi to everybody because it sends it out to all channels we're broadcasting to, and it's from where I'm at, it's hard to see which one I'm commenting to. But she wanted to know, what is your opinion about the Reverend Corder theory? Maria's stepfather, the Reverend John Corder, was the murderer theory.
The Reverend that she lived with, the clergyman?
I think so, Reverend Corder.
No, I think it was William. He didn't want to be saddled with a child. He definitely did not want to stay in the small town and run the 300-acre farm because he was the only male who survived. And so he would have been the one running it for his mother and his sister. and he wanted out. And I think that he used it as an excuse. And I think that he also probably thought that her having 3 children, and if that was evidence, I don't know if it was or not, because I did not read the record of the trial. Now it would be very hard to get that in as evidence because it's not related to the crime. But I think he was relying on the sympathies that she might have been a loose woman and deserved it.
Oh, that's sad.
It is sad.
You know, she actually got justice. I mean, she was found, he was tried, convicted. You know, a lot of times a spirit, that's all they want for them to move on is justice, and she got it. So I could see where it would be more appropriate for him to be haunting, because, you know, your body's cut up, you want to kind of get it back together, I would think.
Right. And there was so many terrible things that were done to his corpse afterwards. And I'm actually doing a lot of research on that right now for another presentation that I'm working on. And he knew what was going to happen to his body when he died.
I mean, that was all.
Yeah, because that was how they did. That's how they ran it. And I don't know if his confessing shortly before being hanged was his attempt to get out of it,
or clear his conscience before he met his maker.
Right, exactly.
Too late at that point.
Mm-hmm. But there are rumors out there. There's also, I had read, I forget where it's posted, but someone has written about, I mean, this case has captured the imaginations of a lot of people. So there are a lot of blogs out there about it. And one writer had said that the father and his brothers died within 8 months of each other. And that is not true, actually. The father died a couple years before, and I'm trying to find it here. He died he died in 1824, and Thomas died in 1827, the first beau. And so we've got 3 years there. So, I mean, people like to exaggerate a little by saying, you know, this family suffered great tragedy with deaths within a short period of time, when in fact that isn't the case. I mean, the family definitely had a lot of tragedy with the 2 brothers with TB, the sister at 15. And I mean, there might be a family curse involved that I don't know, but I think that William probably was not pleased that he was caught, that he was convicted, and that he was then drawn and quartered. And so I could see where his skull would be cursed.
I wonder if he's ever been seen at her grave.
I have not seen any reports of that.
No.
But that would be interesting. I think he would, if he was haunting. I don't think he loved her, so I don't think.
No, but you know, his state of mind at the time he died, I'm sure he was, you know, filled with a lot of anger and fear and remorse, and so I could see why he would stick around where she, you know, once she was found and put to rest and he was convicted, where she would want to move on. Because she, you know, she can't stay around and haunt him. So what, you know, there's no fun in that because he's there.
And she had the one surviving child, but the 2 died. So maybe she moved on. I don't know, but it's fascinating.
And real quick before we move on, we have a couple questions. What's in the place of the barn now is what Johnny wants to know.
I don't know. I imagine nothing. It's probably farmland. But if you go to Polstead, and it's spelled, no, spell that for you. Polstead. And it's in Suffolk, England. You could probably look at a Google map. Because this is still, it started tourism, but I'm sure that there probably is. Suffolk County has a lot of ghost tours. I mean, England is just crazy.
Yeah, I would think this would be a great spot to walk by on a ghost tour.
Yeah. So, I think that it probably, when I go to Scotland, I'll swing through.
Yeah, do that for us. Take some pictures.
No, she's taking us with, remember?
Oh, that's right. My passport renewed.
Connie wants to know if Maria's stepmother or mother was involved with William and her murder. Was she ever charged as well?
She was never charged. And so it was the stepmother. Her mother, Grace, died when Maria was 4 years old. And so the father, like a lot of farmers, with children, needed another wife, another spouse quickly. And so he married Anne. And it's interesting because when you research this, the stepmother's name is Anne, but also Maria's sister's name is Anne. And I think there's been some confusion in the writing as to the stepmother was the one who definitely had the dreams. But in identifying the body, the best source I could find said it was her sister, but I'm thinking that it was actually the stepmother. But I would not be surprised in a small town with few men and options and a much older husband. She wouldn't be the first.
Yeah,
I will say that.
Okay. And then Johnny wants to know, does he have a burying plot?
Oh, well, where is that? Oh, I wrote that down. I don't know. Oh, where did I put that? I don't know. And I'm trying to think. Maria was buried on my birthday. That's sad. Wow. Yeah. 1828. She is buried in St. Mary's Church, St. Mary Churchyard in Polstead. I do not see if I wrote down where he was buried. So I apologize. I am sorry. I don't see it here.
Okay. And that's it for questions.
Awesome.
I'm going to mute and you keep going.
All righty. So our next one. This one's a good one. Well, they're all good. But this is the York County Hex Murders. And so we have the victim, we have his house, and we have the investigators who arrived after his death. And so the cast for this story is Nelson Raymayer, who we just saw. And then we've got John Blymeyer, John Curry, and Wilbert Hess. So the two Johns might be confusing. So I'm going to work hard to not confuse the listeners. And so we are in 1928, and we are in Raymayer Hollow, which is the homestead of Nelson, around Stewartstown, Pennsylvania. So the first thing I need to kind of touch upon or discuss to give you some context for the story is a brief, and it's going to be just a brief discussion of Pennsylvania Dutch magic and John George Homan, his book, The Long Lost Friend, published in the U.S. and Germany, in German in 1820. And so I'm going to, because I didn't think that part through, so hold on a second. I have two screens open, and I was going to read from the other one, so hold on a second. Because, of course, I've lost my internet. Not this internet, but the other internet. Okay, I'm going to have to go here. Tell me what happens when I flip over to another tab. Do I lose you?
Nope.
Okay. Which do you see on the screen?
The PA Dutch Magic.
Okay.
And actually, real quick before we go, because I'll forget what he asked us about, but Johnny, regarding the last case you were talking about, wants to know if her grave marker was still there.
It is actually, so they chipped away at it, and there's a sign on top of it. There's a shed with a sign to protect what was left of the grave marker from people, and it is a very inexpensive sign. So, and I think that's on purpose so people don't steal it.
Okay, perfect.
Awesome. Okay, so my question is, do you see the Haunted Librarian website or
no, we still see the PA Dutch Magic.
Perfect. Okay, so Pennsylvania Dutch Magic. So I'm going to take you on a little tangent here. And so if you know me, if you read my blogs, if you follow me, you know that I am an avid genealogist. I am so fascinated with my ancestral lines, and I can take them back pretty far. And my mom always talked about how her family, and they had deep roots in Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania is associated with the Pennsylvania Dutch. And so there was a story that came out a couple months ago about people finding stuffed animals in their walls. If you want more, you can go to my blog to read about it. But I became fascinated with it because they supposedly talked to some expert who said, oh, that's Pennsylvania Dutch magic. And I'm like, where's that spell at? So I have been reading so many Pennsylvania Dutch magic books that I had to tell my husband I wasn't starting a coven because I'm fascinated, because I need to know this. And nowhere can I find supporting information that stuffing dead animals in your walls as insulation is Pennsylvania Dutch magic. But while researching this, I came across the York County hex murders. And so Pennsylvania Dutch magic is divided into two categories. Well, actually, the Pennsylvania Dutch themselves are separated into two categories. You have the plain Dutch and the fancy Dutch. Not incredibly creative names, but the plain Dutch are the Amish, the Mennonites, the people who dress plainly. The fancy folk are everybody else. And it's mostly German Lutherans who came over, or German Reformed who came over to relocate in America. And they brought with them their Dutch and German culture because the country lines shifted in Europe and very close. And so they actually are interwoven together. So Pennsylvania Dutch is called, and I'll spell it because I'm not learning German. Brauche, maybe Brauche, or Braucherei, Braucherei. And to be clear, Pennsylvania Dutch magic, the basis of it is the Bible. If you don't believe in Jesus and have Christian principles, then you're not practicing Dutch magic. They're just interwoven. And it's actually more the Bible with some folk practices, some healing remedies, really, is what I'm gleaning from my research. But the pre-Christian and pagan traditions are also involved, right? Because that's how the Bible and Christianity rose, was integrating these pagan traditions. And then you've got these German Dutch people who have moved over, relocated in America, and we have Native American Indians. And they were actually, they traded with them. They learned their language so that they did business and commerce with the Native American Indians. And so what they did was they appropriated the Algonquin word powwow, and you can either see it as one word, Powwow, or two words, pow-wow. And that's what they called their ritualistic healing. And so the word can be a verb implying the trance or divination, or the noun being the ritualistic procedure. And it's still used today. And so you can look up John George Homan's book. It was translated, but it just really is folk medicine, and I'm not really sure he wasn't I'm not really sure. So you have black magic and you have white magic in the Pennsylvania Dutch tradition as well. And the black magic is not what the Pennsylvania Dutch practice. That was bad. That's still bad, right? But the white magic is what they practice. And so the Germans had a saying, "Just fishy," just for nice, and it connotes the playful tone on the hex signs that you see in Pennsylvania, the barn stars. So if you're traveling in Pennsylvania and you see these beautiful pieces of American folk art, they're round, they've got symbols inside of them. Those are hex signs for protection. That is white magic. And so it's just fascinating, right? When you dig deeper into the hex signs, and the hexafu was the witch's foot to describe the Pennsylvania folk art and the different branding that they did. And so we also have, and I'm going to flip back over to the presentation. In the left side is the ingredients for a cure, a spell. And then we have John George Homan, who he and his wife came over in 1802. He was kind of like a drifter. He and his wife were, they had to pay off their passage over from Germany. And so they became indentured servants in Pennsylvania. And then after 3 years and a month or two, he was released. And so he actually went around the Pennsylvania area and he wrote this book, Long Lost Friend. And it became the second book that Pennsylvania Dutch fancy folk, because the plain folk don't do the magic, by the way. So the fancy folk did, because that was their, the Bible was the aspiration, big Bible. What sat on top of it was Long Lost Friend, which were the spells that got you through every day. So if you had a cow whose milk had blood in it, had a spell for it. If your baby wasn't eating, spell for it. And you can find the book online because it's out of print and it's in public domain. And some of the spells are quite interesting. And so that's how we get to this hex murder, because it was in this time frame in 1928, it was okay to be a self-professed witch or a witch doctor, because that was the heritage, the large German population and so forth. And so we have Nelson Dietrich Rehmeyer, age 60, and he is he's a self-professed witch doctor. And he is a farmer, and a lot of farmers practice Dutch magic because of their livestock. I do want to make a note that if you are researching this murder, you will see some references to another well-known witch of that era, Nellie Knoll, who was a river witch from Marietta up there, not Marietta, Georgia. She was not involved with this murder. And there are a few blog sites that go on and talk about how she was the one who whispered into John, the first John B. Bleimeyer's ear to go kill Nelson. Nowhere in the trial testimony or the newspaper articles was her name ever mentioned. So forget about Nellie Knoll, not involved. The second note is I'm going to teach you a fact, I'm going to share a fact with you. We think of Thanksgiving as being the fourth Thursday of the month, but sometimes November has a fifth Thursday. Well, back in 1928, Thanksgiving was always the last Thursday of November, which is important because if you're going to read some newspapers, it's going to tell you that he was killed on Thanksgiving, and it's going to give you a late date of the month, and you're going to be like, wait a second, because that's what I did. He was killed on Thanksgiving. So here we have the trio, and they go across. We've got 14-year-old John Charles Curry. In the middle, we have Wilbert Hess, age 18. And then we have John Bleimeyer, age 34. So Nelson going back to Nelson, I'll flip to him. Nelson was married to Alice Corris Schaefer. However, they separated. They never finalized a divorce, and Alice actually lived within a walking distance of Nelson's house. At age 60, we have Nelson. He is a farmer. He is a self-professed witch doctor, and he practiced powwow magic. Now we have John Blymeyer, 34-year-old. He was also a self-professed witch who practiced powwow magic. He had a very troubled youth, and I think that there was a lot of mental health issues related to him. And so his youth was very troubled, and he resided somewhere where he thought he was cursed, and he thought it was his great-grandfather who had cursed him. And he moved away, and all was better. And he moved to Stewartstown, Pennsylvania, and things became worse. He married, well, actually, before he moved to Stewartstown, he married Lily Holloway in 1917. And Blymeyer is from a long ancestral list of powwowers. That's what they're called, powwowers. He and Lily divorced after they had 2 infants, and both of them died. And he blamed a curse. And Lily was very scared for her life. And so John Blymeyer was actually institutionalized and spent some time in a state mental hospital. And that's when Lily actually divorced him. John now moves to the area of Stewartstown, Pennsylvania. He's looking for somebody to blame for his troubles. And he hears of Nelson. And so he blames him for the curse. Well, we have Wilbert in the middle. And Wilbert's family, farmers, had livestock, and they were having some issues with the livestock. And he went to John Blymeyer and looking for help. And John Blymeyer took, first it was reported $20, then it was $40. And he said, you have a curse on you. And the person who cursed you is this guy named Nelson. So Blymeyer gave Wilbert Hess instructions. They had to steal Nelson's spell book and obtain a lock of hair, bury it 8 feet in the ground, and the curse would be broken. So they round up John Curry, age 14, and go out to Nelson's homestead. First time they visited, they can't find him. They encounter his wife, Alice, down at her house. And she's like, oh, Nelson's around. Just go back. He'll be there. And they return. And so on November 27th, 1928, Clayton Hess, Wilbert's older brother, drove Blymeyer, Wilbert, and John Charles Curry to Ray Mayer's Hollow, the homestead. And the brother, Clayton, later testified that Wilbert said that he got him a witch. The trio broke into Nelson's home, and according to newspaper accounts from trial testimony, the attack lasted an hour. Blymeyer jumped on Nelson's back, and he beat him with a piece of wood. They tied him to a chair, they killed him, and then they mutilated his corpse. They rifled through his house, they stole some money, but they never found a spell book. They never found the long-lost friend, because that's what they were looking for, that specific book. The trio were not smart criminals. They thought that if they poured water over everything, the water would actually rub off their fingerprints. So they doused the entire house, wherever they touched, with water, and then they set Nelson's body on fire. Well, Nelson did burn, but the house did not. The fire was put out from the water, and they fled. 2 days later, Nelson's neighbor actually discovers his body. The death certificate from the coroner said that he suffered a fracture of the skull and 3rd-degree burns over 7/8 of his body. And the coroner actually wrote this man was murdered. When the neighbor finds the Nelson dead, investigators quickly identify the three men, and they are arrested on November 30th. I mean, this was fast acting police. There was newspaper accounts that attempted to link this hex murder with another murder, and you'll see that over on the Philadelphia Inquirer page over on the right-hand side. There was a 16-year-old girl named Gertrude Ruby who was murdered, and her case was unsolved. And so they attempted to link the murder with that. The prosecutors did, but they couldn't. That failed. The defense, because when John Blymeyer was arrested, he confessed. He said, yeah, I killed him. And so the defense, because there was this confession, the defense attorneys proclaimed that they should be found innocent because they killed a demon, not a man. And Blymeyer went on record and said he did not regret the killing, and that his direct quote was, "I can sleep now." The York witch trial commenced on January 9th, 1929. And back then, the arrest to trial was fast, very quick. Judge Ray Sherwood was very concerned about the usage of the word witch. And so you'll see other blogs that say that he outlawed anybody from mentioning that word in his courtroom. And that actually is not true. If you read newspaper accounts, they did use the word witch, but it was toned down. But Judge Sherwood wanted them to focus on robbery. It had nothing to do with curses, had nothing to do with witchcraft, hex magic, nothing, robbery. And so the newspapers reporting made it clear that witch did get into it. But, honestly, this area, the jurors and the witnesses and the spectators, they knew what Dutch magic was. So it was not a shock to them. Among the witnesses that were called, we have Alice, Nelson's estranged wife, who identified the trio as being up there. We have Jacob Schwartz, the merchant who sold the rope used to tie him up. We have John Blymeyer's ex-wife, Lily Lease. She was remarried, and she testified that her quote was, "He isn't right." And so she was talking about his mental health in an attempt probably to minimize the jail sentence. John Curry, well, that's the aftermath. Going back one. John Curry, the 14-year-old, he was sentenced to life in prison for first-degree murder. His sentence was reduced to 10 years to life, which means that he would serve a minimum of 10 years, maximum of life, and he could come up for parole. And that was reduced in 1934, and he was actually released on July 7th, 1939. He joined the army, he studied art at the Sorbonne, and he eventually married with 2 daughters. And tragically is not the right word, but he died at a young age. He died by age 49, he was dead. The middle guy, Wilbert Hess, was sentenced to 10 years to 20 years for second-degree murder. And he was also released in 1939 after serving 10 years and 1 month. He married and lived a long life, lived until age 68. John Blymeyer was also sentenced to life for first-degree murder. There were attempts to have his sentence reduced like the others, but those failed. But in 1953, his life sentence was commuted by the governor of the time, John Fine, who stated that he was concerned that he was possibly mentally ill, borderline psychoneurotic. And so John Blymeyer actually was released after serving 23 years and 5 months. So the aftermath of this. The house still remains. The house is still there. And the house is nicknamed Hex House, not to be confused with Hex House, which is the haunted attraction in some states. Because of the hex signs, people think that's black magic. It's not. So if you're Googling Hex House, Nelson, Raymayer, Pennsylvania, it opened to the public in 2007 by Nelson's great-grandson, who took over the house and control of it. And he is actually kneeling there. And that is a glass window showing the hole that burned through the floor where Nelson's body was found in the kitchen. they had the house staged as if Nelson still lives there. And so on the left-hand side, you see money from that time period, the books, his writing desk, everything is as he was there. Now, with COVID, I don't think the house is open anymore. However, if you are up in Pennsylvania, there is a fantastic hex sign tour because the Pennsylvania people have embraced their Dutch culture, and go visit. But the hauntings. So people claim that the house is haunted, and not necessarily with Nelson's ghost, but possibly with a protector, because witnesses have claimed that they have seen a black dog with red eyes, and they've seen a figure lurking inside. Before the property was closed off for a period of time, different people who lived in the area reported, because, you know, they would go out and go see the house, that they would be chased by dogs and turn around and not see any dogs there. So phantom dogs. And they also claim that if you threw a rock at the house, the rock would bounce back at you, which is kind of gravity if you think about it. But it wasn't the bouncing off reflection from the side of the wall. It was actually, that somebody actually picked it up and threw it back at them. And so that is the York County hex murders.
And we do have a quick question.
Yeah.
Connie Lee wanted to know if all three were part of the murder, why did both Johns get 10 to life, but the other guy only got 10 to 20? Sorry, my screen was flickering.
No, that's okay. So the reason why the two Johns they were charged with first degree murder because of what they did. John Blymeyer is the only one who confessed that he was the one who actually beat him up, fractured his skull, and did all the damage. John Curry probably didn't know any better because he was 14 and just might have been his attorneys not saying, hey, wait a minute, but it had to do with the confessions. And so Walter he was there. He was like an accessory during the crime. He robbed them. They took the money, they split the money. And, but he did not actually beat him. And so he was present for the murder, but he did not commit the most heinous parts of it. And so that's why his charge was second degree murder.
So the 14-year-old was tried as a full adult, it sounds like.
Yes.
So there were no laws for underage, minors and murders then, I guess.
No, in fact, I'm actually trying to find my notes because I think they actually pled. John Curry and Walter. And that might be it, but I don't see it in my notes, but I'm kind of thinking that might have been it. Blymeyer went on trial. He definitely did. And I wrote down some of my notes from the different newspaper articles I read. So let me scan these. The headlines were great during that time too, because they sensationalized it, and trial of powwow doctor and York County voodooism they like to raise, and then
like they do now.
Yeah, it is just like they do now, and that's why I want to be very clear. So going back to the question, I don't see where if they pled or not. But that's why I really want to be clear, though. When people talk about Pennsylvania Dutch magic, it's not black magic. I mean, it could be black magic, but don't go there initially, right? Because just like we have white magic, people who practice that and do spell work and so forth, that's white magic.
Yeah.
So you need to be clear and promote that as much as possible.
Okay. And then Philomena wants to know, she wonders if the younger boy was an orphan.
No, he was not. Let me see. He was not, to the best of my knowledge.
So the dog with the red eyes, what do we think that could be? Shapeshifter?
I wonder if something was conjured
Through the magic.
Through the magic.
Yeah. So that'd be an interesting protector.
Yeah.
When you think about it, I mean, you don't think about glowing red eyes as being protective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Connie wants to know, has any team ever done an investigation on the property?
Yes, they did. And I don't know if it's been current. Like I said, I think the house is closed now, but the great grandson Ricky here actually is fine with it. He's not and I'm not going to say he's a practitioner. I do not believe he is, but they actually used to let the local fire department actually run hay rides from the house too for Halloween.
Well, he probably is a businessman and knows that paranormal equals money.
It certainly does.
Well,
yep. Yeah. And then Sean wants to know, the spell book ever mentioned as found?
It was never found. Never found.
Ooh, good mystery.
Yeah. And I just finished reading this great book. And so I'm going to do a quick Google search so I can tell everybody about it. The picture that I have of the items for casting a spell actually is from a museum. Let me pull it up. Wait, where's there's I'm not going to be able to pull it up, but there was an exhibit on hex signs, and it actually traveled over to Great Britain and was there because, I mean, the British are definitely into the paranormal and, well, just the entire package.
Yeah.
And so I don't know that it's if it's a permanent exhibit here in Pennsylvania. I imagine it is because of Pennsylvania Dutch. But yes, here it is. So it is the I don't know if that was it. There's a Pennsylvania German Heritage Center, but the man who wrote the book that I just finished is I think he was the curator of the exhibit. So Pennsylvania, and I got it on interlibrary loan, so I had to send it back, which was kind of sad. I was like, but I think I'm actually going to buy it because it was very good and very thorough.
Well, England's always been more open to spiritualism, spiritism, since Victorian times. There's more spiritualists in England than about anywhere.
Right.
I mean, that's a big religion in England is, spiritualism, as here it's not.
Yep. Arthur Conan Doyle.
Yep.
He was a big spiritualist. Also, it was big in Australia.
Australia, yes.
Yeah. But the book that has a lot of great stories in it is called Folk Religion of the Pennsylvania Dutch, Witchcraft, Faith, Healing, and Related Practices. And it's written by Richard L. T. Orth, and his family were practitioners. And it was very insightful. But nothing about stuffing your walls with dead animals.
I've heard of putting a shoe in your wall when you built your house.
Yeah. These poor people. So a little tangent. The poor people noticed the smell. And they spent over $20,000 to try and get all of the dead animals out of their walls.
Whoa.
Yeah. Was not caught during the home inspection. But it's Dutch magic. I'm not convinced.
I'll stick with Dutch apple pie.
Yes, right.
That would be so good right now.
So, and again, you don't need to buy the Long Lost Friend online. There's plenty of places, or buy the print book. There's plenty of sites online that have scanned it in PDF. So, are we ready for the third one?
Yep. We're all
Awesome.
good.
This one is probably one of Philip's favorite story, not favorite stories, but stories that need a little bit more attention.
Oh, here in Georgia. Yes,
Here in Georgia, right?
I'll stay right here with you for this. This
Oh,
was just in the Atlanta Magazine, just did a whole huge article about this. I think it was 2 months ago.
did they? Okay, I'm gonna have to look that
I've
up.
got it at work on my desk.
Oh, yes, I'm gonna have to. I'm taking it out.
Please tell me you have the crime scene photos. 'Cause
Not here.
Oh, because
the
they
inside.
are gruesome.
Yeah. Corpsewood is
All right, I'll be quiet. Go ahead.
okay. So yeah, I know. This is so if you're in the US, this is an area that can be explored. And so Corpsewood Manor stands as a reminder of a less tolerant time when retired college professor Dr. Charles L. Scudder and his partner Joseph Joey Odom were brutally murdered along with their 2 English mastiffs, killed in rural Georgia, Tryon County rather. However, unlike many infamous locations, Corpsewood Manor may be explored and it's free of charge. You just have to use your GPS to get the coordinates and make sure that you are respectful, because to get to the actual property, you have to go through parklands.
And actually, there is nothing left now.
Nothing? Oh.
No, it is completely
Gone?
just rubble. The last thing I saw, there's tons of video on Corpsewood on YouTube. There's a really good documentary. It's a little Christian slanted to it, but it still has some good reporting. But a lot of people have gone, camped out, done paranormal investigating there, but there's nothing left now. So if you're listening and you live around here and the family that still owns the land, they've gotten real touchy about anybody going. Because you do have to hike a mile through the snake-ridden
Wilderness.
woods to get to it, and there's literally nothing but some rubble there now. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's quite all right. No, that's good to know, because even though it's in Northwest Georgia, it is not Atlanta City. But
No.
We have Dr. Scudder here with Beelzebub, his 1 mastiff. We have the crime scene interior of the house, and then we have the gargoyle that overlooked the manor. And so the cast for this story is Dr. Charles Scudder, his partner Joseph Joey Odom, and then Kenneth Avery Lawrence Brock is actually 1 person. That's 1 person. It's not 2. He just has a long name. And then we have Samuel Tony West. And then the minor characters are Teresa Lynn Hudgens and Joey Levon Wells. So Dr. Charles Scudder was age 56 and Joey Odom was age 37 when they moved to the northwest corner of Georgia near the town of Tryon to escape the hustle of city life. And Dr. Scudder was actually a professor in Chicago. And in 1981, you can still find this article, and it's a delight to read, in Mother Earth News, called "A Castle in the Country." And it's a brief story about Dr. Scudder received an inheritance, and it was in the form of a monthly inheritance of $100 a month. And he sought a measure of isolation. He wanted to get away from living in Chicago. He was a professor of pharmacology at Loyola College, and he just wanted a simpler life. And so on his 50th birthday, he retired/resigned from his job and bought a piece of property on Dead Horse Road. And it took him 2 years to build his house and the guest house and the chicken coop and everything. And with his pension from teaching and the inheritance, he and Joey lived on $200 a month. Now, mind you, they didn't have any electricity, a phone or TV, and there was no running water on the homestead. But he got his simple life, and they moved to the country. And unfortunately, first of all, they were a gay couple in Tryon, Georgia, and we are in late 1970s. And they were they didn't adhere to Christian principles. They dabbled in magic, and so the townspeople knew them. The townspeople liked them. They just didn't really interact with them that much. It was said that if you were out hiking and you came across them, he would offer you peach wine that he made, and that they were lovely to spend time with. And I think possibly that is why they were just sought out. They were easy prey, easy victims. And so they moved to outside Tryon. They lived in this castle-like house that they built, and they were off the grid. On December 12th, 1982, Kenneth Avery Brock, also known as Kenneth Avery Lawrence Brock, age 17, and Samuel Tony West, age 30, joined an impromptu party at Corpsewood with Teresa Hudgens and Joey Wells. They piled in their car, drove out, and they were partaking in the peach wine, some illegal drugs. Mind you, Dr. Scudder was a professor of pharmacology, and he had, I believe, researched some heavy drugs. And they went out. They were having a good time. And then Tony West savagely gunned Scudder and Odom down. The pair ditched the two teenagers, Teresa and Joey, and stole Scudder's Jeep, and they fled Georgia. They actually made it to Mississippi, where the Jeep broke down, and they ended up at a rest stop in Mississippi where they murdered Navy Lieutenant Kirby Phelps, who was 26 years old, and they left in Phelps' car. The two of them had an argument. So Kenneth went one way and Tony went the other. And Kenneth actually ended up in Chattanooga, Tennessee. He called his mom. Then he went down to Smyrna, right down the street from you, Philip. And he was actually arrested in Smyrna. Tony West, Samuel Tony West, actually went on the run. And he was eventually captured. And they were put on trial. The local law enforcement didn't really help the situation and the case, because they immediately, like day one reporting, labeled Scudder and Odom as devil worshippers who kept human skulls. They read books on Satanism, and they were openly homosexual. And the headline for the Valdosta Daily Times on December 18th, 1982, actually the headline was "Devil Worship Deaths Bizarre." And the Chattooga County Sheriff, Gary McConnell, he was quoted as saying, "I definitely think their lifestyle contributed to their deaths. The gentlemen that lived in the house were devil worshippers. We are a very small town, and we had known about that. That's just freedom of religion," he followed it up with. So in one breath, he's saying, we have freedom of religion in the U.S., and so they can be devil worshippers, but by golly, that's the reason why they're dead, which is kind of sad, right? The execution style murders did garner a lot of attention, and it's still garnering attention because of the senselessness of this crime. So Tony West was found guilty of 2 counts of murder and armed robbery and sentenced to death, which was eventually commuted to life. And then Brock, the 17-year-old, he actually pleaded guilty to armed robbery and to murder, and was given 3 consecutive life sentences. What's interesting is that Brock confessed. West was going to take a plea deal, and because they were trying to get the death penalty for him. And so, excuse me, he agreed to plea, but then he changed his mind. And so when he came up for trial on February 28th, he was found guilty, but the first trial was actually overturned. And it wasn't overturned. It was overturned on technicality, not that he wasn't guilty, but it was overturned because there were a lack of women represented on the jury, which is a reason to get that case overturned. And so they had to have a second trial. Are you coming in on Philip? I'm choking here.
The girlfriend with them, she did not get charged, correct?
Correct.
Because there is an interview with her on YouTube. It's the one that has a very religious slanted view to the interview. The woman doing the interviews is kind of wackadoodle. And also what I had read was it was not those boys' first time at their house. That
It wasn't.
There is speculation that there was some hanky-panky going on between the boys and the men for, some party favors.
Right.
And the chicken coop.
Yes, I have a picture of that.
Was slang for the party room. Because apparently, I can't point to it, but the top of the chicken coop was apparently where they would go to party, I guess, for lack of a better term. But so yeah, it wasn't like these boys just out of the blue murdered these 2 men. I mean, there was more going on. I'll just say that.
Exactly. But they did murder the Navy lieutenant.
That one I was not aware of.
Yeah, and stole his car. And so
now I did read where they shot the dogs in front of him before they killed him. And there are crime scene videos of that you can find, but it's horrible.
Yeah, I did not include those.
Yeah.
But West saw the writing on the wall. So when the second trial started, and this happens a lot in trials, when the jury comes in or they're starting to impanel the jury, that's when a lot of times the deals are taken, because it's a moment where they're like, nuts, this is like for real. And so he did plead guilty in March of 1985. Both of them are alive, and both of them are still incarcerated. Brock is at Coffee Correctional Facility, and West is in the Wilcox State Prison. But the story gets...
One had died, so they're still both alive. Okay.
Yeah.
For some reason, I thought one had passed, but...
Well, he might have passed during COVID, because that I didn't. Usually I do check up on some stuff, but that part I didn't. What was I going to say? The tragedy, this was in and of itself a tragedy, but then came the heirs. And because Dr. Scudder actually had children. He had been married before and had adult children who believed that the property belonged to them. And he had left everything to Joey Odom. And so then it came down to a court case in a probate court, actually, over who inherits based on who died first. Because if Scudder died first, everything would have gone to Odom, which meant Odom's sister would have inherited. And that's how the probate court initially ruled it. But then it was eventually overturned that Odom died first, Scudder died because the person he had named in his will was dead. Then it went to his children, and they sold the property off at auction January 1985. There was a fire that was ruled arson at the property in 1983, which started the decline of the property. Joey Odom, he actually was cremated, and his ashes were scattered in the rose garden that was on the property. And then Charles Scudder, he was cremated, and his ashes are buried in a family plot. And when he died, the testimony was that he said, "I asked for this." But you can't read what was he talking about. I don't think anybody asked for it. But yeah, if I go back, so we have Dr. Scudder with Beelzebub, and then this is Kenneth Avery on the left, and then Samuel Tony West on the right. And then here, the left-hand side bottom is the interior of the house. And I gotta tell you, looking at this house, they built that, which amazes me and is impressive. But
it was like a little guardhouse tower too out before you get to the house.
Yeah, there was.
That was the last thing that was standing, but I think it's pretty much gone now.
Isn't it? It's just terrible. It's deeply sad. But
to live in the woods, be on their own, not bother anybody.
I know, simpler life.
Yeah, it's just sad.
But this one, I do know a lot of people. I am not a camper, and it was the snake scared me, so I never went out to Corpsewood. But I do have a lot of friends who conducted investigations out there, and got some very compelling evidence. So
any EVPs?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember who did.
That's also Native American land up there too, which you got to take that into consideration.
Yeah, so you have to think, well, is it them?
Yeah.
Did they conjure something up with their experimentation with their belief system, or is it Native American Indians who were displaced? Or, you start getting into Cartersville, heading up to Tryon, the Indian mounds, and sacred land.
Very,
right?
And they also had they built a swimming pond too that was on the property. That's, of course, it's gone.
Yeah.
But there's some video on YouTube of it when it was right after this happened. It was fully intact, but yeah, it's just sad.
It is sad, and the town people liked them. They didn't invite them over for dinner, but like I said, they made peach wine and would invite people into their homes, and they were just friendly and probably a little gullible.
Sad. You see, country folks see a gargoyle over your front door, and they don't know what a gargoyle is for. They're going to think,
right,
this is some devil stuff, some devil worshiping stuff. It's like, well, it's far from the truth. It's just the opposite of what a gargoyle is. It's to keep them away.
Yeah.
So, yeah, ignorance
is bliss, I guess.
Excuse.
It's unfortunate. And so when I'm back with y'all I think it's in a month, but I'm also going to show you all the hex sign I had commissioned for my new house. It's gorgeous.
Can't wait to see that.
I know, right? And the artist, his father was the person who did restoration in Pennsylvania Dutch country on all the barn stars, and it's a barn star and it's beautiful. Beautiful. But my York Ghost is awesome too. My little teaser. And that is the end.
Yay. You always bring such great stories.
And let me stop sharing.
Yeah, we did have one quick question. What happened to the two teenagers after they left, or that they left stranded in the woods?
They went home and they actually talked to police and testified and went on to live life.
Yeah, the girlfriend that was with them, the interview with her, she is not real bright. If you've not, I mean, she's, yeah, it's like, God bless you, you're pretty, but it's about as far as it went.
Yeah. Well, and it's hard when you, yeah. That's all I'll say.
Yeah.
Okay, well, if anyone has any questions, now's the time to ask them. We still have a few minutes left. I don't know if there's anything either one of you wanted to talk about before we left.
So if you are looking for another story for, and this might have actually reminded people, some of the viewers, about the Greenbrier ghost for the dreams, because the Red Barn murder is similar to Greenbrier ghost, where her mother had dreams of the murder. So that's kind of interesting.
The barn and Corpsewood makes me think of, you probably are aware of what a Geo box is, but George Brown, it's a ghost box, but he uses spring reverb in it, so it has a certain sound to it. But the big trend a few years ago was to have wood from some haunted location and have it built into a Geo box or a spirit box. That was like the big thing. It's, I got this wood from this place where the murders happened. It's like, because it, brought an energy to the spirit box. Now, that's not the kind of energy I would want to bring to a spirit box, but that's me.
I saw one where they did piece of wood from Amityville.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jeff Fent makes those boxes.
Oh, he does? Okay.
Yeah, he goes to different haunted locations and asks to take wood from the location, and he incorporates them in his boxes.
I mean, it's cool from a history standpoint, but the energy for me is not what I'm going after when I do spirit boxes. So, but I get it. I get it. I understand why and blah, blah, blah. It's cool. But
I had someone bring it to an event we were hosting, and that thing would not shut up.
Yeah.
Get me out of this box.
Yeah. And it had nothing to do with, because we've investigated that location several times. And the stuff we were getting in the box had nothing to do with the location. So it had to have been tied to the wood.
And that's what I'm wondering is for contamination.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're bringing an object from somewhere else, especially if it was traumatic, bringing it and incorporating it into an investigation that you're having, what's mixing?
That you're trying to collect data on and find out what's there, you're getting interrupted by something that didn't come from there.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, oftentimes I've had to say only the spirits that are in this location come forward. Any other friends out in the spirit world that like to talk to us or our spirit boxes, please step back and let us conduct our investigation. And then I'll say, if you understand, say my code word, and they do it. We all have to work together.
Yeah, you have your spirits trained.
Some of them.
He makes sure they know the rules.
Gotta have rules. Gotta have rules. They don't always abide by the rules, but you got to do what you got to do.
Oh, yeah.
Even there's investigators that bring along attachments with them. Our team had a girl groupie spirit and her voice would pop up in EVPs at different events. It's like, oh my God, that's that same voice. It's like, we don't know who it is, why she's there. She just likes us. It's like, you got to go. You can't be here with us.
You all are fun, though.
Well, we are fun, and we have lots of snacks, so I get it.
Mm-hmm.
Why you'd want to tag along with us.
Yeah. Connie wants to know, Philip, what was the scariest investigation you've been on?
The scariest, well, it was one that I had done before Georgia Paranormal. It was with my other team. It was the house in Calhoun, Georgia, that was on a Civil War skirmish site. Plus, there was, well, unverified Klan activity, but we all got it. And some of the EVPs were very racist, which was interesting. But when we pulled down the steps to the attic, you pull those down, you heard all the talking coming out of the attic, and then you heard growling. That was freaky, because I said to the homeowner, I said, you hear that, right? She said, oh, you mean all the talking? She said, yes. We hear it all the time. I'm like, okay, that's not right.
Make them stop.
That's not right. Yeah, and then we kept getting Satan and Lucifer and devil, coming up on the spirit box, which was always fun for me. But that place, I would probably have just burned it down and been done with it, because it was pretty bad.
Burn it down, grow a field of sage, and then burn that down.
And another one is one we went to 3 times. There were 3 people had died in the house. 2 others had died prematurely outside the house. But you pulled in the driveway, and you felt like a ton of bricks just landed on your chest. I mean, there were 2 overdoses in the house, and natural causes, heart attack. He took a nap on the couch and never woke up. That house, it was bad. It was just bad. Mm-hmm. And I'll be darned if I did not leave a very expensive piece of equipment in that house and had to go back by myself the next day and get it. And she inherited the house. I said, put it outside. I'm not going in there by myself. So she did, but yeah, I was like, nope. I said, I cannot. We were exhausted. It was like 4 a.m. when we were leaving. And it's like, you just start throwing your equipment in the car. And this was a very expensive piece of equipment. I'm like, oh my God, I'm not going in that house by myself. Yeah, fun times. That's the one where we've got the thermal camera, and there's 4 of us standing there, but there's 5 people in the thermal camera. And I'm like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wait a minute. There's only 4 of us. How's there 5 people, head and shoulders in the thermal camera? I'm like, that ain't right. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, it's scary. It's just part of, we sign up for this. It's what we do. Yep. And yeah, it can be scary, but you have to know how to handle it and what to do and everything that goes with it. But that's what we signed up to do.
Yeah, unfortunately, no.
Yeah, it's like, I got the wrong line and signed up for this. I thought I was in the vacation line.
Well, it was funny. I was talking the other day on my other show. I was asked to do a presentation on one ghost attack, and they wanted me to include personal experiences and evidence. And I'm going through all of my old cases. I was like, crap, I've been attacked a lot.
Yeah.
It's like you don't realize it happens as much as it does.
I just had the one good time, and that was enough for me. Don't ever want to experience that again. Oh. Getting touched and things, it's very jarring and shocking, but it's also very cool once you calm down and think something that is, I can't see, I can't touch, but I felt grab me. How is that possible? That is like the the coolest thing ever.
Yeah. I just don't like when you're pushed and you actually lose your balance and then you can't fight back.
Yeah, it's like, how's that?
It's like you can't punch or trip them back.
But when the one time when I was standing there and I felt someone here, and then the breathing on my neck.
Yeah, I don't like that.
That was wild. I mean, you could feel the and hear, and I'm like, what the hell is that? Yeah, that was freaky.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, the sciencey part of me is like, how is that possible?
Mm-hmm.
How is something blowing hot air on me that is, we know what that feels like. I mean, if you ever, been making out with anybody, you know what that feels like. I mean, he wasn't making out with me, but it's like, how
He might have been.
No, because he said help, like real help. So I was like, okay, yes, I don't think that was a makeout session, but I just find it also fascinating.
Okay.
That's why we do it.
Yep. So
Any other pondering questions?
No, nothing. Oh, hold on. Jeff just asked something. Did you see the news story where the investigator pulled out his gun and shot at a spirit? Are you just joking, or is that a real story, Jeff?
Okay. Now, what did we think?
I had not seen that.
What did we think we're going to accomplish with shooting at nothing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, interesting.
He says true story. I figured as big of a smart ass as Jeff is, it might.
You have to look this up because it's like the woman marrying the spirit of a pirate and then divorced him because he cheated on her. I mean, come on, really?
Mm-hmm.
Did you see him cheating on you?
What was the evidence?
Yeah, what is the evidence?
But yeah, other than that, that's quiet in the chat. A few comments here and there. Philomena loves your stories.
Oh, thank
you for sharing them again.
So what do we have coming up? What's on the schedule?
Let me pull it up. I know next week. Let me pull up because I think I have us booked out to May. I've been busting my butt.
Good.
But I do know 2 weeks from today, we are having a panel discussion on the concept of para-unity and team conduct. And I actually am very impressed with the team that I've pulled together to do this panel. You'll have myself, you'll have Philip joining. We also have Larry Lawson from Florida Bureau of Paranormal Investigations. He's a former sheriff's detective. We have Christopher George from a Paranormal Reader, and he used to be a former forest ranger, and he has teams on his organization across the country. Then we have Steve Dills, as you guys know, he was with Ghost Education 101, and he's coming back to be a panel guest. And then we also have David Taylor from Our Haunted Lives will be joining us on that panel as well.
Fantastic. And I just want to brag on Steve for a minute. Steve Dills, I don't know if we should know him. He is the greatest guy. My team is working on a project to do a paranormal event at a location here south of Atlanta. And I asked Steve if he would meet with some of us and help us go through the steps of, how he does it, because he does all these events at the Hanover Tavern in Virginia where he lives. And he spent 2 hours with us on Zoom, giving us such great information, how he does his itineraries. I mean, just the nicest, most generous person.
Yep.
I mean,
yeah.
You may not
He's
believe
a sweetheart.
But for somebody to take the time and then email me the documents, and it's just the greatest guy.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what this is about,
That's true.
My comments keep disappearing from my screen, so I can't see what's going on. Okay, and then after that, on March 29th, I have my hosting a paranormal event presentation that I'm going to be doing. So I might even ask Steve to join me for that one.
Yeah, I'll be there.
Yep. Matthew Jackson from Paraholics will be joining us on April 12th.
Another great person.
He
That
is
is
a
one of
nice
the
guy.
most generous, wonderfully nice human beings in the paranormal field you'll ever come across.
Yep. Yeah. And then Lisa returns on 4/26 for York Ghost Merchants.
Yes, my ghost. He's so cute.
Philip, I have you down for May 10th for your presentation that you said you were working on.
Uh-huh.
You have 2 months.
Oh my God. We might have to push that out because we're working on this paranormal event project. Oh my gosh, which is...
So if we don't do Philip's presentation on that day, we will do a, because I pushed it back to rearrange a few things. We will do a panel discussion on Ouija boards. Would you rather me do that?
Yeah, because there is so much to do. Well, we're planning a paranormal, well, not just a ghost hunt, but a teaching experience where we're going to teach you how to investigate, and it's at a Civil War home and property, and it is, you're herding chickens too with the team.
Exactly.
Dates, and everybody's got jobs and kids and lives, and it's like,
So I will change that. So May 10th now we'll do a panel discussion on Ouija boards, and I do have a couple different witches that are going to join us, and I want to try to get a wide variety. So if anyone is interested in that, please reach out to me. Then on May 24th,
that laugh.
I know, I'm curious.
A panel discussion on orbs.
You got to get the orb guy from YouTube.
I've reached out to him. I'm waiting for him to reach out to me.
My God. Bless
Okay,
his
so,
heart.
but there are some that come at you where you're like, that's not a bug.
But it's bless his heart.
But man, those are things that starts. Man, that's like throwdowns.
Pandora's box full of crazy.
Yep. I figured it would be fun.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Totally.
Yeah. And then June 7th, I have Science and the Paranormal, and I'm going to reach out to Robert Bradley to see if he can join for that one because he has some great presentations on that. And then another panel discussion on collecting evidence 2 weeks after that.
Well, and the presentation I'm working on, that's, it's in my head and it's about to come out and be put in print, is Crossing Spirits Over. Spirit rescue mediumship is what it's going to be about. Okay. But I know there's not enough time in the day to get everything done. You two know that.
Oh, yeah. Jeff wants to know, and he puts serious question. I love how he puts that before it. Is ITC a modern form of Ouija boards?
Instrumental transcommunication. It's Ouija boards is more of a divination tool, in my opinion. For ITC, it usually needs to be some kind of electronic component to it, either in the radio or the recorder or something that's producing the data is electronic, where Ouija boards, it's also like my scrying that I do. That's divination. It's also a form of a visual ITC, but I don't think Ouija boards falls into the ITC category. I don't know. What do you two think?
I don't think they're the same.
No, they're close because I view even EVP sessions the same thing as a Ouija board session, just because you're opening up the doors to communication. But as far as the technical aspect behind it, they're just off.
It's almost like tarot cards or tea leaf reading. The Ouija board is kind of a tool like that. Mm-hmm. But as far as my understanding goes, ITC is there's some type of electronic component involved in it. Mm-hmm. Whether it's video loop back to get spirit faces, which is it's a fun experiment. It'll drive you nuts watching the screen, but I've had some limited success with it. But yeah, that's a good question.
Okay, and Sean, the date for that one, I have it planned right now for May 10th. Okay.
Yeah, and I wish the lady that I went to her Ouija board presentation, I sent you the video.
Yes.
Yeah, we still want to work on getting her, but she's in England or Australia, so the time change thing is really hard to figure out. But she teaches a class on, gives a presentation on Ouija boards as from the aspect of channeling. People have channeled like books and different things to the Ouija board. You know, she calls them angel boards more than, you know, Ouija boards.
Right.
But, you know, it's using it in a positive, productive manner. But, you know,
yeah, that could be something that we do ahead of time and record with her. We just won't have guest comments, or we could even do it ahead of time on Ghosted and, you know, air it so we get some comments and then rerun it at night.
Because it was a really great look at the Ouija board from a different perspective where, you know, it's not demons and Zozo and all that crap. It was very interesting.
Okay.
Still, don't mess with them. Yeah, we've got a case coming up that we're investigating on the 25th, and the daughter, during our Zoom interview, she's literally getting scratches developing on her during the interview. But guess what she's been doing? Playing with a Ouija board. Yeah. So that's going to be a fun night.
Have fun with that one.
Yeah, I've never seen that where, you know, there's no faking that when you're on Zoom and she's sitting there with her mother and her dad and the little sister, and they start just red streaks just start forming on her. Now, okay, where the thing we have to look at too is there a manifestation aspect to this. That's part of what we've got to investigate.
Right.
And it wasn't the type of, it didn't look like a allergic reaction to anything. It looked like scratches. It's fascinating.
Poor thing.
Yeah, but she's not terrified of it. She's not, which is another aspect of the investigation, is she's not being frightened by it. She's like, look, and it's like, you shouldn't be so
encouraging it
about this situation. So yeah, this will be complicated. Anyway, you know, I can talk all night about this stuff, and y'all are ready to go to bed.
I'm good whenever you guys are ready.
All right, yeah.
Up to you guys.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being with us.
Yeah, I love it.
We'll see you in a month and a half.
See you in a month and a half, and then you'll see my hex sign.
Oh, what's going on with our YouTube channel? Is any updates?
Oh, yeah. I've been slowly re-adding videos to it. I do one video like every 2 or 3 days, just so we don't get labeled as spam.
Yeah.
And where are my banners? It is Ghost Education 101. And for some unknown reason, that wasn't taken.
Yeah, so you can, you know, eventually all of our presentations will be on there in one easy spot to get to.
Yeah.
Because we've done, since we started in 2020, there's like over 50.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's all free education, people.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, if you want to donate anything, just let me know. I'll give you my PayPal number. I need $900 to have a tree taken down in my backyard. They're coming next week, so, you know.
Oh, man.
Yeah, not what I want to have to spend.
Commenting.
Not what I want to spend money on, but, you know. All right, ladies.
Well, we will see everyone in 2 weeks. So
awesome. Y'all have a great night.
Good
you
night.
too.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you for everybody listening.
Okay, why isn't that playing?
All right, spirits.
Okay. It's There we go.